a meme team when this first started coming out, but I mean, it's so strong, and especially making it to global finals, like, this is a duel to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and I believe it actually got second in that last Players Cup finals as well. And so Alberto just leading with it right away. I think if you're Alberto, you're actually really happy to see Grimmsnarl because that's a Pokemon that often isn't going to carry Protect, right? So I love the Protect and Max Strike play turn 1 from Alberto's, and I think this is really, really safe. It covers every option. Yoav does not have a free switch into Max Strike. The Protect here on Weezing just prevents you from getting hit by a Precipice Blades or a Max Quake from the Regigigas, or sorry, from the Groudon. And what's important here is to just conserve the Weezing, right? With Weezing Regigigas, you basically want to make sure that Weezing is out on the field for all 3 turns of Regigigas Dynamax. Yoav right now is not putting on any offensive pressure, and even if Groudon maxes, the Weezing should definitely survive the turn. Groudon actually ends up going for a Protect, but I think this just means a free knockout on a Grimmsnarl if it doesn't have Protect here.
Yeah, Weezing, of course, also going for the Protect, as we saw. Yeah, I would have loved to see the Groudon, like, I mean, Yoav had to make a choice here. I would have loved to see the Groudon go for something a little more aggressive, because now Alberto just picks up a free KO and just starts taking some super big momentum here, dropping the speed on that opposing Groudon and bringing Yoav right down to 3 Pokemon right out of the gate here.
Yeah, Regigigas is activated, and it is here to play right now, getting a free knockout immediately. That's exactly what you want to do with Weezing Regigigas. You want to pick up 3 KOs in those 3 turns, and it's a little bit easier when, you know, you don't go for a Protect. And because the Grimmsnarl was led here, Grimmsnarl fares really, really poorly into Weezing Regigigas because, yeah, you can't go for any prankster attacks, right? So you're just going to get knocked out. Now there's that Will-O-Wisp from that Weezing, really good option into that Groudon. Max Strike into Charizard is really safe here. So Alberto really just, you know, going for very consistent options. Of course, you could have doubled up onto the Groudon here, but you don't want the Charizard to just potentially, you don't want to ignore one Pokemon here, right? So the Max Strike does so much damage in the Charizard. The Will-O-Wisp covers for the option of Groudon attacking here. One reason why Weezing plus Gigas is also very strong is because while Weezing's not very fast, you can lower your opponent's speed with those Max Strikes. After a single speed drop, Weezing will actually outspeed a fair amount of Pokemon in the format, including this Groudon and this Charizard right now. So it is going to be Charizard maxing here. I think that's the correct decision. If you max Groudon and gets hit by a Will-O-Wisp, you just have no damage. But what's tough for Charizard is that there's no sun right now.
Yeah, certainly. As well, since it is G-Max, I mean, it doesn't have access to Max Flare to set its opponent's sun here.
Oh man.
That's a lot of damage that it's going to be taking. Man, another speed drop, of course. And it is going to return a G-Max Wildfire into this Weezing, dealing a good amount of damage here, and being able to set up the residual fire effect. But this Will-O-Wisp is going to connect onto the Groudon here. The Groudon, of course, protecting last turn, was very vulnerable to this burn, and is just going to be hitting a little bit of damage, not even being able to pick up that key KO on this Weezing here. You need to get, if you're playing against this team, you need to get this Weezing out to really slow down this Regigigas, but Weezing just holding on.
Yeah, and critically actually having a berry as well, so despite the residual effect from G-Max Wildfire, Weezing will survive the turn and can survive another turn. So, I mean, perfect first 2 turns for Alberto. I think if you miss the Will-O-Wisp there and Groudon you know, KOs with the Precipice Blades, that could actually put you in a pretty tough spot. But now, the Regigigas gets a 3rd max move off, and it's just going to do so much damage. Even if you protect the Groudon here, like the Charizard and the Groudon have just been whittled away so much at this point, Alberto still has 2 Pokemon, including his restricted Pokemon in the back.
That Charizard just going for that max guard, but Alberto was not concerned, went for the Max Strike into the Groudon instead, laying a massive amount of damage, and of course, keeping his Weezing safe for this turn to make sure that neutralizing gas can stay out further. Groudon, of course, does have its own Citrus Berry to be getting some health back, but this Groudon being burnt and super, super slow is not going to be doing anything out here at all.
Yeah, and it's been a basically perfect game for Alberto so far, I think. And, you know, Yoav has definitely been doing his best to keep himself in this one, but it's just really tough, right? Like, Yoav, after turn 1, I think you're honestly banking off a Will-O-Wisp miss at that point. And maybe, you know, he was hoping for the double up to actually KO Weezing, but without the Sun up, the Charizard is just so much weaker. That's why that's why Charizard is so reliant on the Sun being up. So Alberto has a very, very big lead right now. This Regigigas is still able to outspeed both of the opposing Pokemon. Like you said, Sierra, if you're going up against this duo, you really want to knock out the Weezing. And in the end, like, Alberto got maximum value out of both of these Pokemon. Still has 2 Pokemon in the back as well. So it's not looking great for Yoav right now. There's not much damage output. You know, the Charizard protected last turn, so you have a guaranteed attack into that slot. And Yoav opted to not protect that Groudon last turn either. Charizard actually ends up switching out here, which is kind of surprising to see.
A little surprising, but with a couple speed drops as well. I mean, it surely would have been KO'd, but Incineroar going to be hitting the field instead. The Regigigas free to hit that Ice Punch into the ground and will pick up that KO here, as this Incineroar is just going to be taking the Sludge Bomb, and very easily, might I add.
Yeah, takes it well, but I think it's just too much of an early lead for Alberto now. Sure, Weezing goes down, but Regigigas has done everything that Alberto has needed it to. It basically got, what, 4 attacks off, and that's just so powerful in the context of this matchup. Able to, you know, start off the game so quickly, render Yoav's Grimmsnarl completely useless. Grimmsnarl's whole purpose in this format is to come out, set up screens typically, or trick, for example, a lagging tail over, and the Weezing is basically the perfect counter to that. So Alberto here with that Calyrex. Now, you know, Incineroar can actually do damage into Calyrex, so that can help. I think from Alberto's end right now, you do want to make sure you don't just carelessly lose both of your Pokemon on one turn, especially because I'm not sure Calyrex can actually get a one-hit KO onto the Incineroar. Pretty interesting sneak peek at the moveset there. So just going for Astral Barrage here and the Earth Power onto Incineroar. I mean, if you know Yoav's Charizard doesn't have Protect, this is a really, really safe play. So looks like Charizard's not going to offer Protect here, and it is just going to be a knockout into that slot.
Yeah, dealing a little bit of chip, of course, not really doing too much to this Incineroar, but this Incineroar is left against basically Alberto's whole team here. Alberto hasn't even revealed his last Pokemon in the back. Is just going to go for that Snarl, dealing a really nice chunk of damage to this Calyrex. Just a little bit of chip on the Regigigas, as it will hit the high horsepower, of course. It does deal some damage, but with that slow start being active now that the Weezing's gone, not doing too much, and is going to knock itself out due to its own legwork damage.
Yeah, I was thinking the one way Yoav could come back in this game is if the Incineroar had a stronger Dark-type attack, right? Not something that's basically more effective than Snarl. You protect the Charizard, and then you go for that Dark-type attack into the Calyrex. But since this is an open team sheet tournament, Alberto most likely knows the Incineroar doesn't have, or Alberto certainly knows that Incineroar doesn't have a stronger Dark-type attack. So it's really safe to Astral Barrage in that position. Even if Charizard protects, you're not going to get KO'd. Another Astral Barrage will KO. Urshifu, really the perfect Pokemon to close out this game as well. So, I mean, that was just an example of Alberto having a good team matchup and also executing it perfectly.
Yeah, it's such an aggressive team. I mean, the fact that there's no abilities on Yoav's end to try and counter this Reggie. I mean, the Charizard's so strong, no Sun doesn't really do anything, no Intimidate, like, from the Incineroar, no Prankster to be getting up any of the screens to stop it. Like, this Regigigas can just snowball so fast in the match, and that's exactly what we saw there. So what can Yoav really do going into this game too to try and slow this down a little bit?
I think the first is you really need better switch-ins as, you know, an option. Like, part of the problem in that last game was that Grimmsnarl was completely useless, and you need to basically stall out Regigigas' turns of Dynamax. Sure, you know you're going to take a lot of damage, but if you can either switch something in or just go for, you know, protect, for example, protect both of your Pokemon, let one thing go down, protect both of your Pokemon again, then at least you come out of that only having lost one Pokemon as opposed to taking so much damage across the board. Porygon 2 is also an interesting mix-up here because I think maybe it can survive a Max Strike, and it can also pressure with Trick Room, right? And so if you can get Trick Room up, it's actually really valuable in this matchup. Just might be a little bit hard to actually do that because of the potential taunt from Weezing, but something like Porygon and something that can put on a lot of offensive pressure, for example, that Groudon, we can actually put the first turn in an interesting spot, right? Where if you lead Porygon Groudon, you can pressure with Max Quake into the Weezing and taunt with the Porygon. We know that Weezing doesn't have something like a Shuka Berry, and so by going for something like Max Quake and Trick Room, you basically force the decision to be made on turn one. Do you go for a taunt? Do you go for a Will-O-Wisp onto the Groudon? Do you just protect the Weezing, for example? And so I think you definitely need to make turn one harder to play, because if not, Regigigas is really just going to sweep through you.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties about a best of three, though. Of course, Yoav can bring something out to start, see how it fares, and then start to reevaluate for game 2 to see if there's something that fares a little bit better. So let's get into this game 2 to see what adjustments are being made. I'm really hoping to see the Porygon, and the Porygon 2 is going to lead with that Groudon, just like you said. A fantastic lead adjustment, and I'm excited to see how Alberto reacts to this.
I think, yeah, this is still really tough for Yoav, to be honest, but yeah, at least you have options now, right? The taunt on Porygon here is safe. It denies a Trick Room immediately. But what's scary is, of course, this means that you can't burn the Groudon now. And I'm thinking Groudon Max Quake can just knock out Weezing. So, from Yoav's end, I think right now, the safe play to make turn 1 is to go for Trick Room and Max Quake into Weezing. This covers your options and make sure that you at least get something out of the turn, right? Even if Will-O-Wisp goes out into Groudon, you can't knock out the Groudon this turn. And I like this decision. I think this is exactly the 2 Pokemon on Yoav's team that can at least survive a Max Strike or Max Hailstorm on turn 1. So, I do think that Yoav needs to, get something out of this first turn. For example, if you're too careless and end up protecting the Groudon, and Porygon just eats up the taunt, that would, I think, be really, really bad. So I'd really like to see a Max Quake and a Trick Room come out on the same turn, just to make sure you trade a little bit on this first turn to come out more even than the last game.
Of course, Alberto, as these teams do, going for that first turn max with that Regigigas. We're not going to see a max from Yoav's end, though, instead opting for that Protect. I mean, I didn't fare too well last time, though. This time, Alberto did target into it, not doing really too much damage here. And I mean, we'll see what Yoav does here. That's a big protect here. The taunt, of course, going into this Porygon, which is certainly not going to appreciate it, as it did go for that Trick Room. I feel like any pressure Yoav had to start this game off, I feel like it was just kind of lost in that one turn.
It is completely lost, yeah. I mean, I think Yoav basically going for a really big play, and you can certainly respect that because this matchup is really tough for Yoav, honestly. And so I think Yoav recognizing, hey, if Alberto makes a mistake and actually doesn't end up taunting Porygon and I get Trick Room up, I'd probably just win the game with the Groudon. However, like you mentioned, now he's in a really, really difficult spot. Porygon 2 is not going to do anything while taunted. The Groudon's protected, so now you can safely double up onto that slot. I like the decision to switch out the Groudon here into the Incineroar because it does bait out that Max Hailstorm. Alberto actually went for Hailstorm, got a little bit more damage off that first turn, but Alberto also correctly going for Max Strike because at this point you've done enough damage where Max Strike just covers for that potential Incineroar switch in. So I think Alberto playing this perfectly, and Yoav, gets a little bit greedy on that first turn, ends up getting punished very heavily for it. But I'm probably still in a better spot than at least that last game where it felt like it was really doomed after the first 2 turns.
Definitely a better lead adjustment than the first game. That Incineroar is going to go down, and Porygon 2 going for that Ice Beam. Just doing a little bit of chip here. I don't really think that there's too much this digital duck can do well taunted, though. It's definitely, I mean, with things like Ice Beam, is not going to be applying too much pressure here.
Yeah, with the Ice Beam, you're basically just hoping for a freeze. Otherwise, the damage is so negligible, it adds nothing what's relevant to this game, right? So Alberto, once again, just off to a really good start. Yoav this time around at least will probably not take as much damage. I mean, it's still really tough because this Regigigas is still a huge offensive threat. I like the decision to protect the Weezing here. Now you have to make the decision, yeah, do you Max Strike Porygon or do you Max Strike Charizard? Yoav, of course, can get around the Max Strike. That's going to be targeting the Charizard by going for Max Guard here. And I think, I would like to see that because at this point in the game, you are pretty far behind already. So it feels like you need to make a couple of correct predictions. And this is why I want to see that Groudon max on turn 1, because even though, Yoav is, has a little bit more health this time around, it's still just a really tricky position. Sure, you get the max on the Charizard right now, but the late game damage output just feels a little bit lacking, especially if the sun doesn't actually go up. And this Porygon 2 is really working against Yoav right now because it just does nothing. Yeah,
the Porygon 2... I mean, it could have been so pivotal here, but can't do much while taunted. It's so interesting to see a Weezing not protecting till turn 3, but really hasn't been pressured up until now. Charizard with that Wildfire, going into the Weezing and doing next to nothing. Of course, we'll be setting up damage for the following turns with that residual effect here, but we see that Max Strike come out onto the Charizard and do absolutely massive damage here. And this is definitely a little tricky, especially taking that much damage and a speed drop to boost.
Yeah, that much damage, a speed drop. I mean, Regigigas once again gets maximum value out of its couple of turns. Now, this time around, there was that Groudon Protect on turn 1, but at the end of the day, it still effectively knocked out the Incineroar and got 90% of damage on the Charizard. And more importantly for Alberto, the Weezing is still out on the field, which means Regigigas once again gets to stick around for a little bit longer. Sure, the taunt is wearing off, but at this point, Alberto should have that Calyrex and that Urshifu in the back. Both of those are such strong options to close out this game. You can just go for a taunt on a Porygon. I think the one way Alberto could lose this game is if you carelessly let Trick Room go up, right? So you want to make sure Trick Room does not go up at any point. Feels really safe to just taunt into Porygon, go for an Ice Punch into that Charizard slot. And so Alberto, needs to just go for the correct play here, cover your bases. You have such a monumentous lead. Yoav in that last turn had the option to go for the Max Guard with Charizard, doesn't end up going for it, and as a result takes so much damage onto that Charizard.
Opting to go for the Max Guard this turn. So it does get to stick around for its last turn of Max, but like you said, not going for it last turn is definitely putting it a bit of a disadvantage, as this Weezing is free to just taunt into this Porygon to yet again, which did opt to use Ice Beam, probably knowing the taunt was most likely coming and just looking to try and pick up this KO on the Weezing instead. Of course, being a little short and giving it the opportunity to just pick up its berry and be gaining its health back, so it gets to just be more annoying for another turn here.
Yeah, I mean, once again, with Weezing Giga staying out on the field this long, you need to pressure the Weezing as quickly as you can, and in the end, by protecting the Groudon and switching out, the Weezing was never at threat of getting KO'd for the first couple of turns, and the Max Guard coming out maybe one turn too late right now. At this point, it's really, really tough to come back. I will say, I think Alberto, went for that Giga Impact last turn. That actually could have been very risky, because if you miss that Giga Impact, that'd be huge for Yoav. Yoav actually gets the double Protect off, but I just feel like it's really hard to beat the Calyrex and the Urshifu at this point. So, good attempt there, but I'm not sure it's really enough to claw back in this game. I think what Yoav wants to go for is basically leave the Weezing, or leave the Regigigas on the field and keep targeting down the partner.
Of course, the P2 getting hit with Sludge Bomb and getting poisoned in the process. It will be able to pick up the KO on the Weezing finally, and get rid of that neutralizing gas. But I mean, with the Incineroar being taken out, the Porygon being poisoned and not doing too much, and this Charizard being close to KO'd, it's definitely a little late to be taking out that Weezing here.
Yeah, Weezing has once again done its job as well as it really could have, and now, you get that free switch into that Calyrex. The double Protect at least keeps Yoav in this game for a little bit longer, and so good decision to go for that, recognizing, hey, I'm just going to faint otherwise, so why not just try to stay on the field for a little bit longer. But, I mean, this is looking really, really tricky, especially with Porygon being taunted. The main thing here is Yoav's win condition. It feels, he has to try to set up Trick Room, right? But how can he get up Trick Room at this point? There's so much damage on the opposing side of the field. And the poison, doesn't do any favors as well. So I like Alberto's play here. I was thinking the one way maybe Yoav can, finesse a Trick Room is if you don't switch out this Regigigas, you leave it on the field, then you actually can't deal enough damage to KO the Porygon 2, and then maybe Porygon 2 can set up Trick Room the next turn. But that's not going to be the case here. And so good decision to finally switch out that Regigigas, and it is looking very, very good for Alberto right now, especially because that Charizard protected already. Astral Barrage will get the knockout onto it, give you a special attack boost as well. And Urshifu, really the perfect Pokemon to have in the back here.
Yeah, that Urshifu, of course, coming out here. This, of course, not doing anything to the P2, but will be picking up this KO on the Charizard here. And, I mean, with that Charizard being out now and this Urshifu hitting the field, is there anything that can really be left on Yoav's end?
I don't see any out here unless you get a freeze with Ice Beam. So Ice Beam needs to freeze here for a chance, and no freeze comes out now. And that feels like the game to me, because, you have Groudon in the back, but at this point the Calyrex is at +1 special attack. Urshifu can, safely go for an attack into either slot. I suppose the upside for Yoav is that there is Regigigas in the back, and Regigigas is not going to do very much damage at this point. Groudon is also... I mean, the big question is whether or not Astral Barrage KOs at +1 special attack, because I believe that Calyrex does also have the spell tag. And so if that's a KO, then you can very easily just go for Astral Barrage and close combat into the Porygon slot right now. I think the one thing you want to be careful is, yeah, not doubling up into Groudon, because if you double up into Groudon, Groudon protects Porygon Trick Rooms, that's your one out. Yoav actually ends up not going for the protect here, but Alberto made the correct play anyway, so now you're just hoping to survive the Astral Barrage. Let's see if it's enough to survive. Oh, that's not. Yeah, so that is going to be enough for the KO onto Groudon. I think Yoav there, you have two plays. You either just hope for Alberto to misplay and double up into your Groudon, hoping that Alberto is just nervous of, not being able to pick up the knockout onto Groudon, and then just protect Trick Room, or, maybe he's just hoping to survive the Astral Barrage there. But Calyrex Shadow Rider, so strong in this format, with that special attack boost as well, enough to really seal up this endgame. This one was definitely close.